Hi everyone, in today's lesson we're going to talk about how we can analyze trig equations now that we've graphed them. So the first thing I want to do is review a problem that we did last week. So the first example, we'll call this example number 1, is y equals 3 sine 2x plus 1. Now, we already know how to find the a, the c, the p, and the I, but I'd like to just review that. So if I want to find the amplitude, we know that the amplitude is the absolute value of the number in front. So the absolute value of 3 is just 3. The number of cycles is the number next to the x right here, so that would be 2. The period is defined as 2 pi over b, where b is the number of cycles. So in this case, the cycles are 2. So 2 pi over 2 is just pi. The interval is found by taking the period and dividing it by 4. So the period is pi, so interval is pi over 4. Now, there's some other things that we can find from this graph. You should be recognizing that there's a plus 1 on the outside. And from the videos from last week, you should recognize that that plus 1 is my vertical shift. So this is my vertical shift, or the equation of my midline. So we can actually ask you to determine that from given the equation. So I could also ask you to tell me, well, what is my vertical shift? And what I'm looking for is for you to give me a direction. So this plus 1 tells me that I'm going to graph up 1. That's the shift. The shift went up 1. And the equation of the midline is I want you to tell me where is my new midline? And that answer is the line y equals 1. And again, you guys did that with your graphs, and that's what this plus 1 means. And then I could ask you to find out the maximum value and the minimum value that the graph will hit. So just to kind of show you what I'm talking about here is, since we have an amplitude of 3 and a vertical shift of 1, just like you did in your video, right, in your last week, if this is my vertical shift, but then I'm going up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then down 3, 1, 2, 3, my sine graph is going to go up here and then down here, right? So my new maximum value is really just 1, if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and if this is 1, 0, -1, -2, this is where my maximum value is going to be, and this is where my minimum value is going to be. But you're probably wondering, well, how can I get that information, without this picture? And there's a little bit of a formula that you can use. So to find the maximum value, you want to take the midline and add the amplitude. And to find the minimum value, you want to take the midline and subtract the amplitude, right? I mean, look at your picture. If my midline is 1 and my amplitude is 3, the 1 plus the 3 gives me 4. And then if I did the midline, if this is my amplitude, right? Midline, which is 1 minus the amplitude, 1 minus 3, is my -2. So just using the formula, my midline is 1, my amplitude is 4, my amplitude is 3. So let's try that again. My midline is 1, my amplitude is 3. That gives me a max value of 4. For my minimum, my midline is 1, and my amplitude is 3, so 1 minus 3 is -2. And that's it. That's my information that I can get without the picture. So let's try another example. So what if I write y equals, we'll call this example 2, y equals negative 2 cos 3 parentheses x minus pi over 4 and then plus 1. So you're going to notice I added a little bit of complexity to our equation. I added some stuff in the middle. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to graph these, but we are going to have to find out some information from this equation. So nothing has changed. This is still my vertical shift. I put VS for vertical shift, also my midline. Okay. This here, the absolute value of A is still my amplitude. Now in this middle portion right here, the only thing that changed is that we put some number on the outside here. So this number here is the number of cycles. I'm going to call it B and write cycles. Now, since we are inside the parentheses, do you remember that shift that we talked about with transformations? That is going to be a left or right shift. So this guy is your left or right shift. All right, so that's all. So let's see if we can do and find all the information. So my amplitude is my absolute value of the number in front, and the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. The cycles is the number in front of the x. So here's my x, and the number in front is written a little differently, but it hasn't changed. It's still in the same spot. That cycles are 3. My period is found by taking 2 pi and dividing it by b, where b is the number of cycles. So this would be 2 pi over 3. My interval is still found by taking the period and dividing it by 4. So my period is 2 pi over 3 divided by 4. So we keep, we change, and we flip that 1/4, and we multiply straight across, and we get 2 pi over 12, which reduces 2 pi over 6. That's my interval. Okay, now we can gather the rest of the information. So what is my vertical shift? Well, we have to look here at this plus 1. So plus means that we're going up. So my vertical shift is up 1. My equation of my midline is the line y equals 1. If I want to find my max value and my min value, remember that max is your midline plus your amplitude, and your minimum is your midline minus your amplitude. So my midline is 1 and my amplitude is 2, right? So midline is 1, amplitude is 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. That's my max value. My min value is my midline, 1 minus my amplitude. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And then the last thing that I need you to find is my horizontal shift. I'm just running out of space, so I'm going to put it here. So my horizontal shift, I need you to tell me the direction. So you have to look right here in this formula. Because I'm inside the parentheses, I'm going left or right. And you have to remember it's opposite of what you think. So you think that because it's negative, you're going to the left, but you're actually going to the right. So you want to say right, and by how much? It's just this pi over 4. So you will say that the graph would be shifted right, pi over 4. Okay, let's just try one more problem. So we'll call this problem number 3. So y equals negative 4 sine 5x minus, well actually let's say plus, pi over 2, and then minus 3. So from this graph, I'd like you to tell me a few things. Please tell me the vertical shift, the horizontal shift, the equation of the midline, and the maximum value and the minimum value. So take a couple minutes, try this problem on your own, and then hit resume when you're ready for the answer. Okay, so for vertical shift, you should have put down 3. Vertical shift comes from the outside number outside the parentheses. Because it's negative, we're going down. Next, for your horizontal shift, you should have written left pi over 2. Remember that the horizontal shift comes from inside the parentheses, and it's opposite the sign that you think it is. So instead of right pi over 2, because of plus, you're actually going left pi over 2. For your equation of your midline, you should have written y equals -3, because your midline is the same as your vertical shift, -3. Now, to find the maximum and the minimum, you needed an equation. The maximum is the midline plus the amplitude, and the minimum is the midline minus the amplitude. So my midline is -3, so I could put that in both spots, plus, minus, and we have to find the amplitude. So my amplitude is found right in front here. Take the absolute value of -4, which is 4. So I'm going to add and subtract 4. So my maximum is -3 plus 4, which is 1. And my minimum is my midline minus my amplitude. So -3 minus 4 is -7. And that's it. That's analyzing graphs with both vertical and horizontal shifts. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Have a good day.